Hey everybody, I just want to talk about one of the most important things I've added to my setup in 2025. This is Omnibus. I'm going to pull it up in just a second. This is from a company called Audiomovers. You may have seen their other software. They do the service called Listen To, where you can send your audio over the internet to other places. It's a really cool piece of software, but today I'm looking at Omnibus, and I've been using it now for a few weeks. And every single day, I've discovered a new little thing, a new way to work, a new functionality. And I feel like as of this moment, my setup is as good as it's ever been in terms of this digital routing. So what is this thing? It works in the background. It's a piece of software that helps manage all of your connections. You can see on the screen I have a bunch of connections already made. And there are some things on the left side over here that may need a little figuring out. But here's what this does. It gives me all of my inputs on the left side, all of my outputs, destination channels on the top, and it lets me route between them. Now you might be thinking, well, Logic already kind of does that. You can put your input device in Logic and your output device, and you can choose which thing goes where. That's got to be enough, right? Well, in most cases it is. And yet there are a few scenarios here that I found that this is working even better than I could have imagined because I'm using some stuff with Logic outside of Logic. So let me explain a little bit about this. We have our device list. This shows up all of our devices. In fact, I can add additional devices. You can see right now I've got Logic Pro and Safari as options. But I have things like my phone, which can connect to the system, my computer monitors, which are HDMI, and then these virtual things, which are related to something else. And then I also have these Omnibus virtual devices. Here are all the devices I have in use. My Telestream audio capture, which is for my screen capture, which is what I'm using right now. I have an Insta360 camera, and that has a microphone on it, so I could do that. My SSL12, which has 16 ins and 8 outs. And then we have the Steinberg UR22 Mark II, which is a 2-in, 2-out device. My Mac Studio speakers, Zoom, which actually is really handy. And then Omnibus A and B. Those are two virtual devices. Right off the bat, I will say the virtual devices are very flexible. In fact, if I click on this, you can see how many channels you can configure it. You can just do a simple 2-channel all the way up to a 256 channel. And that actually does make a difference for what we're doing here. So for the most part, my routing is relatively simple. I want to, in Logic, use the Omnibus virtual interface. So A in and A out. That's the virtual device. You'll see my buffer is set to 64. It's pretty low. So for that, all of my SSL12, 1 through 16, that's all of their normal inputs plus their ADAT light pipe inputs, which I have another interface for that. And so I have another 8 channels. The top 8 channels come in through that. Those are all immediately routed up to Omnibus A. So anytime I put Omnibus A in Logic, channel 1 would be channel 1 on the SSL12. Channel 2 would be SSL12 channel 2, all the way up. So I can just put Omnibus A in Logic, make that my input, 1 through 16, and it'll be just like I have my SSL attached. The nice thing is, in 17 and 18, which I've changed now to the UR22 1 and 2, I just patched this other interface in, and it now shows up. So this is very similar to the aggregate devices that we can do in the operating system in our MIDI I/O setup. That part is very similar, except we have additional controls, and I would suggest better latency issues or results. So I can come over here and you'll see, for instance, here's my Steinberg. I click on this little button. It shows more information in the system. That actually opens that up and we can actually see that. So it's still tied into the system. However, we're not relying on the system to make this aggregate device in the same way. Okay, let's move on because I do have some other things that are routed here. I use Omnibus B, a 2-channel virtual interface for everything, from my streaming to my screen capture, to run to a tape deck if I want to do an alternate output. All of those things I've got routed usually through Omnibus B. That's kind of like my send to for everything else. So I have, you'll see Omnibus A, channel 1 and 2. So that would be my output. So logic, if the output is set to Omnibus A and I'm saying go out 1 and 2, this is that 1 and 2 right here. And it goes out Omnibus B and it goes out SSL 5 and 6, which are the headphones. And that's routed through the SSL software. Right now, in this particular snapshot, it's also going out this thing called Telestream Audio Capture, which is for the screen capture. So technically, the Omnibus A, which is logic output, is going out the Omnibus B for streaming, Telestream for the screen capture, and then the SSL 12 so I can hear it. You'll see there's also some lines going out the SSL 12 from down below. And that is the SSL input channel 3, which just works out because that's my microphone and I want to be able to hear myself in the microphone, and it's low enough latency that it's perfect. It's not giving me any sort of issues whatsoever. Okay, whew, that's a lot of stuff happening all at once. Here's the beauty of this system. First of all, we can also mute input and output and change levels on the virtual devices and then some of the other devices. So if I need to mute it, I can mute it, etc. Okay, so the settings, here's our overall global sample rate, which becomes important. We need to make sure that we have control over that and all the devices are lined up. Our buffer size for this is 128, and that was, I think, the same as in Logic, but they're not the same, but we do have, it's low enough that I've been able to do everything I want to in almost every situation. We do have clock drift compensation. That's when you have multiple devices. You do have to do that. And then we can do some MIDI input. I haven't done much with the MIDI input at this point, but there are some other settings here, which like use colors for devices and show connection lines and show routing matrix, always on top, etc. Just basic stuff. Here for me is where the power is, and that's in the snapshots, where I can come through, set up a bunch of cabling for the different items. I can save it as a snapshot. Right now I'm on the screen flow, screen capture snapshot. And then we can right click and save as hot snapshot up above. So I can just click on any of these using key commands to get to them. But perhaps for me, the most powerful part is that I can come into my Stream Deck. And when I installed Omnibus, these came automatically. There are 5 different items here, which allow us to control, without having to do any sort of programming or workarounds or anything, direct control parts of the Omnibus stuff. So I'm going to just really quickly, I haven't set up my last snapshot yet. And I'm just going to say, let's do snapshot number 5. This is from alt speakers. And so what I'm doing with this one is, right now it just goes to my Mac Studio speakers. So I can just listen to a song. I can hit this button and I'll be able to hear what it sounds like on those speakers and go back to like the default, and it'll turn the speakers back off. It's a great way to incorporate additional speaker setups or whatever. And so I'm going to do alt speakers. It's a teeny little screen, so we don't have a lot of room to work with it. I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it, well, that much bigger. And let's do a color here. What color don't I have? We'll just do nice version of pink. And it still has that background, which I find like it comes with certain backgrounds, but of course we can do whatever we want. I just did like a little screen capture of a piece of gray. I'm just going to drag that on there and put that as the background. And now I have that loaded up on my Stream Deck. That means I can just hit a Stream Deck button, which is right over here, and it'll switch the routing. I can't do it right this second because I'm in the middle of a stream or a screen recording, and so I can't do that. It'll cut the audio. But I have found one of my biggest issues with streaming and with screen recording is when I change the audio configuration someplace, like in Logic. And then if you change your input or output, you have to reboot the audio in Logic. Well, now all I have to do is leave Logic as Omnibus A in and Omnibus A out. And I can change whatever I want to in Omnibus, and it leaves that Omnibus A as the input and output. Never have to reboot that engine while I'm changing all of the routing. I can change routing while I'm pushing play in the middle of something. It's just going to get whatever this sends as out and whatever it sends as the in, and it's going to just keep on going. Okay, that's a lot. There's a lot to this. It's simple yet complex. The best part is that you can create whatever setup you want. You can push your audio whichever direction you want, and this is handling that, and it does it in a high quality manner. And this is, just perhaps in the future, if I have a big session and it's really pushing the computer and I need to increase the buffer size, I would have to do that anyway. But this adds a little bit of that buffer. So, in theory, I could always just go back in Logic to use the SSL12 as the primary interface for a session. That's always an option. You're not overruling that possibility. The one time it would be difficult is if I start using multiple devices, the UR22 Mark II, for instance. If I've got some instruments coming down through there, if I want to put my microphone on here so I can save the SSL12 for things in the studio, maybe this is a talkback mic that I want to send into the other room, then, you'd have to have this open all the time. But so far, and I'm sure this is going to jinx myself, so far this is something that hasn't crashed. It hasn't caused any issues. The latency has been good. Any latency that I've noticed has been caused by things in Logic like the mastering assistant or putting some effect, a chroma glow on something. This doesn't add any of that issue. It just works in the background and works so well. So hats off. If you're looking at this, it could be worth exploring and figuring out. I don't know. So the other things that we didn't look at were the AVB and the NDI. If you're working with devices or studios that support those protocol, then even more value for it. The overall price of this is $199.99. It's like I said, it's not a sponsor video. I don't have a link to give you, but it's worth looking at if you're doing complex setups or if you want to do streaming or if you want to work with multiple devices and have them create one super device. This is going to be the option that you should look at. It's just so cool and easy to use. And I found the setup to be really intuitive. You're clicking in between in and out points and you're just designing that setup that you want. If in Logic then you want to do more, you can. For instance, I/O labels, right? So we're looking at 17 and 18. I don't think that there's any provided by the driver, but we can come in and add some of these ourselves. So let's see, we're looking at UR22, right? Yeah. And we'll do one UR22, 2. Do I want to do a space? Probably. And, we just do the same for both of those if you want to. The nice thing about this then, if you're setting this all up in the long run, is that we could simplify that if we want to. If we actually connect something to that all the time, then we would just leave or put the name of that in there. as this is, you can see UR21.1 and UR22, UR22.1 and UR22.2. And so I can see those in the actual menu when I'm going to them. Plus, you can see it's searchable by those as well. Okay, hopefully this was useful, if nothing else, to see an option of a piece of software that's out there designed to help studio professionals be both efficient and powerful and flexible. And if you're looking for something like this, then go to their website, find out more, and just realize that, again, this is one of those times that you're getting someone's true perspective. Nobody has asked me to make this or is paying me to make this. I just want to share this because it has literally changed how I run my Logic setup with all of the gear that I have. Okay, that's it. Talk to you later.